What's going on, everyone? You're back with your boy Jono for another quick math lesson. Today we're going to search for the midpoint between 2 points on a Cartesian plane. We're actually going to do this algebraically. That's going to be our big focus, just to make sure that we are exactly halfway in between these 2 points. We are going to have a look at it graphically as well, but I guarantee you're going to find that pretty easy. So finding the midpoint between 2 points can be a little bit helpful, finding that halfway distance, and the half is actually a really important concept. Half is the same as dividing something by 2, and that concept of dividing by 2 is going to come up in our algebraic formula. The first thing you've got to do every single time you hit this topic is please just have a guess. You're just looking for in between. If you have 2 things here, and you can tell me where about halfway is going to be, you're going to be on the money. 9 times out of 10. For example, if I asked you to find the midpoint between these 2 points, I've got 1, 1 and 5, 5, you would just go, Jono, it's somewhere around here. Just put a circle there, you're probably done. I can see that that's 3 across and 3 up, the point 3, 3. And all we're trying to do is make sure we can prove this mathematically. Off the graph, it's pretty easy. I went up 4 boxes, so halfway is going to be 2 boxes up from that 1. Which is equal to 3. Then again, I went across 4 boxes, so 2 boxes to the middle is going to make that 3 point. Then if we've got something like this, -1, -1, all the way across to 1, 4. Again, we could probably just guess the midpoint's probably around here. Again, we can do this just by counting boxes. If we went up 2, well, 1 box would be halfway, so I know that my halfway point vertically is going to be on that x-axis. Then if we go across, if I go across 2 boxes from this side, back 2 boxes from this side, I've got 1 box to go, meeting in the middle, that takes it to 1.5, 0. So I know that answer is probably right. But we can't rely on graphing every single time, because if you make a small mistake, we might not be able to just see where the midpoint is exactly. So if we had a look at this one, we've got -3, -1, all the way up to 2, 5. Again, the midpoint, I think it's going to be around here, but that's not on a totally exact box, so I'm not 100% sure what the answer is going to be. So the answer of where I think it could be is like -0.5 and up 2 and a bit maybe. That's not going to be accurate enough. What we've got to do is take these 2 points, put it into a formula, and then we can know for sure exactly where it is. Just as a really big pro tip for this, make sure that we are finding a point. It's the midpoint. That means we have to have an x and a y coordinate. You can't just have one answer for this, because we need to know where we are in space. How far across, how far up and down. The formula for finding the midpoint is actually incredibly easy. It looks like there's a lot going on here, but all we're doing is plussing the 2 x numbers together and dividing by 2, that halfway, and also plussing those 2 y points together and dividing by 2. So we plus the 2 front numbers, divide by 2, plus the 2 back numbers, divide by 2, and you'll get your answer. So let's do this for this question. I've got -3 and 2. They're my 2 front numbers. So I've got -3 plus 2 divided by 2. That's the same as -1 divided by 2, which is equal to -0.5. That was my guess to start off, but that's really reassuring knowing that that answer is definitely correct. Then for my next one, I've got -1 and 5. Again, I've just got to plus them together. I'm down 1 plus 5 is equal to 4 divided by 2. 4 divided by 2 is 2. So the point that I was kind of looking at is now exact. I know that the midpoint is back 0.5 and up 2. Even though that's not exactly what I had on my drawing, I knew that that was around the ballpark number. So this algebra just proves what I already thought. Working out the midpoint is actually the exact same formula as finding the average of something. We add up all the scores and divide by how many scores there are. But for this, we've only got 2 points, x1 and x2. Add those 2 things up and divide by 2. That's the average between these 2 things. So again, you're not really learning any new maths. Can you add? Can you divide? You'll be sweet. Sometimes you won't be given a graph. Kind of sucks because you can't just guess by looking, but I still do want you to guess every single time. We're going to use the formula to again prove it, but if you've got a good idea before you get started, it'll just help adding and subtracting some of those more difficult numbers. So let's have a look at this. What's the midpoint between 0, 4 and 2, 8? So we're going to work out the x numbers first. X is the front number every single time. So what's the mid number between 0 and 2? I reckon you can work this out, but we will just see it in the formula. 0 plus 2 divided by 2. 2 divided by 2 is just equal to 1. That is the midpoint. What a shocker. Then I've got to find the midpoint between 4 and 8. Again, I want you to have a guess. The only answers that could be right are 5, 6, and 7, because it's in between those 2. 4 plus 8 is equal to 12 divided by 2. That's just equal to 6. Again, you probably could have guessed that. That means that my midpoint is 1,6. Done. So it does get a little bit harder when negatives start to get involved, but again, we just have to plus them together. So for this one, I'm looking for the midpoint between -2, 3 and 4, 5. So again, we're going to do the x first, plus the two front numbers together, and then divide by 2. So -2 plus 4 divided by 2. Let's have a guess what numbers are between -2 and 4. So my only answers can be -1, 0, 1, 2, or 3. So if it's any of those numbers, I'm probably getting this right. So -2 plus 4 divided by 2. -2 plus 4 is just 2. Divided by 2 is equal to 1. So the midpoint for my x coordinate is just 1. Now I've got to find out the midpoint between 3 and 5. I think I'm going to know what it is. 3 plus 5 divided by 2. 8 divided by 2 is 4. So my midpoint for this whole line is 1,4. Done. So the only way that this can get hard is if you're adding two negatives together and you make a mistake. So for this one, I've got -6, -5, and -9, 0. What's the midpoint? So the first thing I want you to do, we're going to do those x's. What's in between -6 and -9? Before you even get started, I just want you to have a guess. What numbers could the answer be? So for this, I've got -7 and -8. They're the only two numbers in between there. So if I'm not around -7 or -8, I've definitely got this wrong. So -6 minus 9 is equal to -15 divided by 2. Half of 15 is 7.5, and because it's a negative, my answer for this x is -7.5. Then the same thing for the y's. What number's in between -5 and 0? It's going to have to be -1, -2, -3, or -4. -5 divided by 2 is -2.5, which fits into my guess before I even got started. And now my midpoint is just -7.5, comma, -2.5. So my big pro tip for this is do use colors like I did there. Make sure that we're doing the x numbers together and the y numbers together. That's the only real mistake we can make. Again, just have a guess before you get started, and this is especially important for our negative numbers. If you're on top of that, you're going to find this lesson incredibly easy. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you later.